Hello again. In an effort to further break down things I started in the last couple videos and back up some of the things that I think are wrong with 10th that I'm hoping change at some point, I wanted to provide some analysis of changes to the game and their consequences, a lot of which feel kind of unintentional. And after that, I'm going to go over a game I played yesterday, my 8th game of 10th, and some things that happened in it that reflect these points with like a real world example. Oh no, these beast nagas shoulders are chipping a little. That's very sad. The way the charge phase works in 10th, you have to legally place a model in base contact with the model you charge if possible. So in this instance, say this is our movement phase. Don't ask why the Wraith Lord is just out in the open with Beast Naga boys 4 inches away. Don't ask why he ended his move there. It's fine. Maybe there's a truck over there that careened and then the boys disembarked. And that's how they're in this position. And our opponent was out of CP for Phantasm. Let's roll with it, okay? There's a Wraith Lord here. We have our Squig Hogs in the bottom left. And then we have our Beast Naga boys in the top right. So if you're playing 9th or the game in most of its history, you would probably perhaps move like this in a way where you're just closer with everyone. You're ready to make that big charge and get all your little guys in there. So a thing that changed in 10th is that if you were to charge with these models as they're currently positioned, you would be severely handicapping your melee potential in the fight phase. The reason for this is all these Squig Hogs down here are going to have to move into base-to-base contact, which is going to leave less room for the Beast Naga boys. And if we charge with the Beast Naga boys first, they're probably going to entirely block the Squig Hogs from being able to charge. In this example, let's say that we rolled a 7. This is how we would have to move them. We would have to move them so that every Squig Hog is in base-to-base contact. This one's not, but you know, this is Warhammer. We fudge stuff sometimes. He has to be in base-to-base contact. They have to move more or less like this. And then this means that when our Beast Nag is charged, there's going to be a lot less of them in combat than we would have been able to do in previous editions. So if we charge of our Beast Nagas first and we have a 7, we're going to end up with something like this. These models, no matter what order you move them in, they're going to have to end up in base-to-base contact. You can't possibly block them off. And if they get a 7, they're going to have to wrap around like this so that these Squig Hogs can't make their charge anymore. This is probably roughly how they'll end their movement. It feels like very non-deliberate that the phrasing of charging ends up with this, but I think like as long as models have to end in base-to-base with each other, this is just how it's going to be, and we have to plan around that in our movement phase to avoid it. You could do things like if you get a 7, you could CP reroll this and hope you get like a 2 or a 3 instead, but it's not ideal, and if we're careful moving, we can make it so our charge doesn't get any worse, but we can still allow for both units to be able to make it into combat with all of their attacks. Okay, so this is better movement. The units are the same distance from the Wraith Lord as they were before, but we are not going to move block ourselves this time. These Squig Hogs are all within 2 inches of each other. They're 3-man squads. They don't need the 2 within 2 rule. And these Beast Nagas are abiding by the 2 within 2 rule up here. So this back Squig Hog is just about 9 inches away from the Wraith Lord over here, which means that we're going to have to roll a 9 or higher for him to make it into base-to-base contact. And I pre-measured so that this back one is over 12 inches. So even if we get a 12, he doesn't have to end in base-to-base. The worst we're going to do is move block our Beast Nagas with 2 guys. Like if this was a full-size board and these guys like weren't in the corner, I would stretch them even further back than this, because with pile-in, our 3-inch pile-in, like I think we're going to be able to have both of these guys in no matter what. If you wanted, you could probably place this one like here-ish so that they're always 3 inches from his base. But then you have the potential, if you rolled like a 10 or something, you might end up in a similar situation to what we had earlier. I like this because it allows us to still have a good charge. I think it's a 3 with this guy. So no matter what, he's not going to fail. If you roll double 1s, then you're within an inch here. Position these guys so that on the pile-in, they can still make it into base-to-base contact with this guy's base so that they're all able to fight. And that would look something like this. So like say we get a 7 again. They have giant bases, so they'd both be able to touch this Squig Hog's base, who's in base-to-base contact, and be within base-to-base contact of his base, meaning all of them can fight. If the Beast Nagas get any reasonable charge result, their move should end something like this. You can do this with larger blocks of infantry too, and just string them back a bit further. Again, like this board is cut off here because it's on a tiny table. But with pile-in, I mean, you might deny yourself a couple attacks if you string them back too far, but I think most of the time it's going to be worth it, so you don't end up like a situation we had in the first example. Or if you have another unit charging that's like all set, it's fine, because like then their positioning isn't as important. All we want to do is make it so both these two units can fight with all of their models in this example. So as long as they're good and they're not move blocking, we're all set. These guys can do whatever, it's less important. But say you had like 2 units of 10 beast nagas, I would string one back a bit far. So if they end up not quite like this, we're going to have probably like at least 3 or 4 most of the time in base to base, and then a second row of like 3 or 4 behind them. So like 6 to 8, or maybe more than that if you're careful, if you're pile-in attacks here. And then it would be like a reasonable amount of beast nagas on the other side here too. You would be able to move them. I don't know like what the math is of 20 32 millimeter bases surrounding a Wraith Lord base size, but you'd be able to get as many as are physically possible to attack in. So yeah, this is sort of what you would want for an ideal charge. Like all these guys can attack. We've got the 2 here in base to base. They were able to attack through these 2, and then the squig hogs are the same. And they're this is called a sunflower formation. I mean, usually there's more petals to the sunflower, so it looks more like a sunflower, but you have like a bunch of models attacking off of one, which is a lot harder to do in 10th and 9th. In 9th, if I ran like 5-man squig hogs, I would always have like one here and one here, and you can still like end up with the same result, but it's like it's so much work in 10th to do and requires a lot of pre-measuring and for you to be a lot more careful with your movement. I think this is something that will frustrate new players once they realize the game works this way. And most of them will probably not notice it most of the time, because they and their opponents are presumably reasonable people who just allow guys to kind of move however. But in a tournament setting, like these things are going to have to require like some attention and diligence in order to play optimally. Another weird thing in 10th is move blocking your opponent with objectives. In this instance, I don't think we're really losing that many. We're only losing like 1 attack here. But theoretically, like if you are the Wraith Lord player and you want to prevent your opponent from charging, always like look for the objective and try and use that to your advantage. Depending on the initial placement of these guys, you could have easily move block a few. Like for this example, I gave them a 10-inch charge, but say they had gotten like a 6 or something, then there's a good chance these wouldn't have been able to fit over here and would have had to like go something like this, and with their pile and potentially not been able to like string around to this side. Here's another example of that just from the front. Say I had a 3rd unit over here that I'd wanted to charge into the Wraith Lord with. This would have prevented that 3rd unit from being able to engage by using this objective here, because we've gone with these first in the previous example, then these would have charged in. I would have run out of room if legally all of these models would have had to make it into base to base with a 10-inch charge. Another thing to be careful with, to either deny your opponent's ability to tag other stuff or to minimize the number of attacks they can make, is your own positioning. In this example, the Marines are spread out pretty far, so that when the Beast Nagas charge in, if they get like an 8, they're going to be able to all basically fight. Like this is after an 8 is charged, and with a pile and we'd be able to get every single model into combat, versus if you did something like this, this is the models starting the same distance away from each other. Beast Nag is ending their charge here. Then with the pile-in, there's only going to be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 models who are able to fight, starting with the same charge distance away. All the Space Marine player did is stretch the models out backwards. If you're planning ahead for your opponent's turn, like you're expecting to get charged next turn, imagine what unit is charging you and how far they're going to be charging from, and then try and position your models in a way to deny their attacks. This was a thing in 9th too, but I think it's a lot more severe in 10th, and you can exploit it in like more extreme ways, which I'm like, frankly not a fan of, but I want to like make videos breaking this down for people so they're informed and like both know how the game works on paper right now and how to like resolve these situations. Yeah, I don't know, it's super weird. I feel like this is the kind of thing, like I'm missing like devastating wounds on a 6 for Fate dice is like kind of understandable because it's like a specific subfaction. I'm sure they didn't have time to playtest everything that much, but this change is like really surprising to me that no one caught this in playtesting. I feel like casual players will notice this too, or they're just like rolling 12s and reading the rules as they're written and ending up in scenarios where like models are completely surrounded and then they wanted the charge of something else and now can't. So yeah, I'm really curious to see if this changes over time. I'm like hoping it does. This is one of the things that I noticed when I was like first reading through the rules of 10th that I was really disappointed by. As I've stated previously, there's a million things like this in 10th edition, and I'm going to keep doing videos that slowly break down all of them. I feel like every change they made to 10th edition that feels intentional and like it was written carefully and deliberately is great. And then it's like all this stuff, like the jank between the lines, that makes me feel really down on it. I'm going to stick to the movement and the charge phase and provide examples from a game I played yesterday. But yeah, there's just like so much stuff like this. If anyone sees anything that they've noticed in their games that's weird and wants to tell me, that would be great. I want to like compile as much of this stuff as possible and keep doing videos about them. So if you want to leave a comment, that'd be greatly appreciated. So here's a game I played against my friend Charlotte yesterday and her Harlequins. I took this as an excuse to use the Gargantuan Squigoff here because I love him and I think he's pretty good right now. For any orc enthusiasts in the audience, it is for sure worse than the first list that I posted, but he's a big Squigoff. How can I not run him sometimes? So in this example, we were playing the Ritual, which is the one where you like place objectives later in the game by performing an action. This objective was one that she placed. So this is a thing you can't move over. If she wanted to, I think, and like wasn't being as nice about it, I think she could have placed the objective here. And models can move over objective markers, but they can't end their move on them. So she effectively could have really move blocked the Squigoff by doing so, because he would have had to spend a turn like moving up here right before the objective and another turn moving over it. And he is also, I think, yeah, he's like about 10.5 inches long from the tip of his horn to his tail. And his movement is only 10. So that means she would also force him to advance the following turn if she had like move blocked with the objective right here. I'm expecting tournaments to just allow models to move on top of objectives again at some point. It's a thing people have talked about a lot, but like if you're just playing 10 like rules as stated, this is like a thing that's prominent. Like a Squigoff is a giant model that's easier to move block, right? But like, I mean, there's other models in the game that are close enough in footprint that this would affect it, like a Baneblade or like even like a Mauler Fiend or something, just like a large thing you could potentially deny at least like a few inches of movement from by doing this. We're also doing player place terrain, and player place terrain pieces have to be 4 inches away from each other unless they're ruins, in which case it's 6. And because the width of like one of these objective mats is about like 7 inches, you could place a building here and then like another ruin here and then like do the same thing from the start of the game on any mission, not just the Ritual, which is like a weird anomaly of a mission where you place objectives. Like if your opponent's like not paying attention, you could just like move block them. I think this is something that like is more egregious on paper than it is in person. Most people who like play the game are like pretty nice and don't want to win exactly like this. If you were in this situation on the receiving end, like just contact the TO and then see if they allow you to make an exception or something. It feels like another unintentional part of having objectives that you can't end your move on in the game. I think like the only thing they wanted as a result of this is they didn't want knight players or whatever to just like use their whole base to occupy this so that no other models can end on it, which I get. They're trying to illuminate like any parts of the game like that, but by doing so they cause other problems and just like a never-ending revolving door of jank. And I personally think it's much less of a big deal if your opponent is using like a knight to block most of an objective than like something like this. Another thing that's really funny is unlike last edition, we couldn't find anything that states that a model can't be on multiple objectives at the same time. The Squigoff has OC12, so you could put like one of his feet here and then like another one here, and he would be able to have OC12 on both objectives. There was a rule that specifically stated last time that a model couldn't do this, and that seems to be like completely gone from the rule book. If I'm wrong about this, like this is something I'm less positive about, like someone please tell me. I would like to be proven wrong, but like I couldn't find anything that states otherwise. This was an instance where she was able to use the objective to move block my Beast Nagaboys a little bit. Like when they charged, I couldn't quite fit another guy here. I mean, like a base could fit here, right? But like the way I would have to move, I couldn't quite fit here. And then I would have normally wanted to like pile in these guys to like get a little further up, but because I can't end a guy here, I'm losing 2 more attacks than I would have had otherwise. 2 attacks is not the end of the world, but I think like this is just like a random thing that happened in the game without her trying really that hard to move block me. I think there's like plenty of situations you could have like much more like egregious outcomes than just losing like 2 models attacking. It just feels bad to be in the cycle of like, I feel like Ninth was like so close to eliminating a lot of the weird sources of jank in the game, and this feels like when they introduced the 2-inch like engagement range in Ruins, that was like quickly removed, except like everywhere and rampant and like in too many mechanics at once. And it feels frustrating to be on the cycle of like the game's like gradually fixed, that there's like a lot of good changes happening or making progress, to like, oh no, it's you can wall glitch again. It's not that like, oh, now that like this is in the game, my friends and I are going to have to like out jank each other in casual games. It's like, if you're in a tournament, someone theoretically could do this stuff and would be like technically right. That's like obviously unintentional, and I'm just gonna keep making these in the hopes that eventually someday further proofreading is done before certain rules are published, and hopefully, like ideal case, the rules team is able to hire more people to go over this stuff. I don't know how they're structured. I don't know what the budget is for the rules team. I've heard it's like smaller and lower than one might think, considering the size of Games Workshop as a company. And again, I don't blame the people making the game. I'm sure the game designers don't have enough time to do all this stuff, and I think that's probably largely also the result of them wanting to have physical media that doesn't change once it's printed. And I wish everything was truly online and could be updated constantly. That would be so sick. I think the new app is like very good. I have like some issues with it. Like I wish it was easier to export a list without being like 100,000 characters. There's no way to just like export a simplified view without like every war gear piece listed. But that's like so minute. I think the app is like great as a whole. What if everything just like lived in there and those were the rules? Yeah, you could solve so much. I would still buy codexes for lore. I'm not like so blind as to think that like sales wouldn't go down in some capacity as a result of like codex sales, because people don't need to buy them for their rules anymore. But I think like long term it would be like so much better for the game from the player's perspective and also from the company's perspective, in that like their player base is probably happier, the game is better, and they're like able to sell more models as a result of doing so. So like I don't know if any of this stuff is going to be changed in 10th. I'm hoping it will be, but I don't know. Like it seems like there's like certain things that they're like unwilling to change. Like dev wounds is another one that I really wish would change. But I mean, and like a lot of people are proposing great solutions. Like it just does like 1 mortal in addition if you get a 6. I think it is unfortunately more likely from my perspective, but they would just like keep it 6s do mortals, because I feel like they don't like changing the core rules unless they like absolutely have to. It also feels weird in like this edition where they're trying to build up like specialization as a thing, and like units do like a specific thing, but they would introduce dev wounds, which is like a way to allow something with like an anti-tank 12 damage weapon or whatever to have that become mortals, and then suddenly just like become an anti-infantry tool as well, because 12 mortals is 12 mortals, right? Like you can kill a squad of like 10 guys with that easy. You can kill 4 custodian guard with a weapon that would usually only otherwise kill 1. I think another great solve would be it just makes you not have a save of any kind. That would allow like weapons to still do like 12 damage, no questions asked, to big targets, but not like have weird mortal wound spillover across the whole unit. I was initially going to do like a big these are my problems of 10th video, but I think it's like really too much for me to be able to do just like in one video. And I want to keep doing these like little ones that are like informative instead, and also leave a little space for like griping. I do like OC a lot, and I like the missions. I think there's like a lot of great aspects of 10th, but yeah, I want to keep outlining things. If you have a grievance about 10th that you would like to outline, constructive criticism is appreciated, and if you want to comment that would be cool too. I want to keep compiling this stuff and writing a list. Again, as always, I love Warhammer. I care about this game so much. I'm only upset because I want it to be better, and I'm hoping we eventually arrive at a place where the jank is like massively minimized, and things that are mostly held together because players are like reasonable are instead just like a part of the rules. If there's any other stuff about the charge phase that you want me to cover, let me know too. We're still only scratching the surface of like things that are weird about the charge phase in combat. I'll probably do another one of these videos in the near future if you want to keep an eye out for that. And later after recording this, I'm going to go back to making a painting video that I've been working on. So that's coming too. Like, subscribe, comment if you want to. And thanks for coming by. See you next time.